Hello, welcome back to Blender LIVENODING. In this episode, I'm gonna talk about Blender Procedural Sky. Basically, Procedural Sky is an add-on that actually comes with a recent version of Blender. It's been there for a while. It's called the Dynamic Sky, and this is actually the one you can use for Cycles render. So if you just go to add-on and then you search for Sky, you can get this procedural Sky setup, and it will do all the setup for you automatically. And yeah, it basically generates the sky up there. If I just delete the floor, you can see we can have the sky and just the horizon. And I'm gonna take you through the creations of everything. It's pretty easy to use, and if you search for it, there is actually documentation out there at blenderartist.org, and you can have a read on that, or we can try to use it from scratch. There's also documentation at this website. This one is probably also talk about it. Yeah, but anyhow, I'm gonna start from scratch. So we are transitioning to Blender 2.8. I'm currently using 2.79, but I'm gonna tell you that it's gonna be great and even easier for anyone with computer, and they can just install Blender open source, and they can start using this feature of cycles. Or in the future, we're gonna have Blender Eevee, which is like more like a 3D game engine real time that can render realistically on the screen for you. So yeah, if you want to render something, you need at least a 3D objects, and you need some kind of lightings, and also a camera. So that's the basic idea, right? So for now, I'm just gonna be using the monkey head. This is the standard 3D monkey head, but you can use 3D objects from maybe Sketchfab or something that you scan or something that you model yourself, or you can ask any Blender artist or any 3D artist to make 3D model for you that should work with Blender. So I will be using Cycles render. You can use CPU or GPU. I'm gonna talk as if you use Blender for the first time. So I will be switching to compositing because it's easier to explain that way. So we have the monkey head. If we do a quick render, like preview render, I will switch to rendered, and we can see something that's super plain and basics. There's nothing here, just the Susan head. Even the Susan head doesn't have the cycles material yet. So I'm gonna create a new material. By default, we are getting this diffuse material, and you might find that you can also have glass, and you can also have gloss. But if you want the combination of these three, the easiest way is to use principled BSDF. I'm using the version that's closer to 2.8, so we have this random walk kind of calculations for the subsurface scattering. So it's going to be a lot faster. So this material is a really good standard material to use. And with this guy right here, I'm gonna smooth it. I tap spacebar and smooth it, and then Control 2 or Control 3 to add subdivision surface modifier. Okay, so that's taken care of. So we have Suzanne, and if we render, it's still kind of boring, but you need to just set up the world environment. You can use the HDR image, or you can use the environment sky from Cycles, or you can also use this one, the one that we're gonna talk about today, Dynamic Sky. This will set up procedural sky for the world. I will show you the HDR first, just in case you didn't know. So with this world object being selected, you can change the color, of course, right? And we have this basic material. that you can play around with. It's already looking pretty nice, but it's super basic. There is nothing nothing in it. Can save it, and you can turn on ambient occlusion, but don't use that. That I think you can use a little bit. It tends to flatten the object. So with this guy, you can use environment texture, and you can perhaps use the sky texture. That's gonna give you a sky, but it doesn't have any cloud or anything. It's just a clear sky. But this is pretty good, and you can choose either Hosek, Wilkie, or Freedham. This gives you the basic sky look. Doesn't have any lighting or you know, like the time of the sky, but anyhow, this is pretty good. You can use also environment texture, and let's get example HDRI. This one actually quite nice. The studio. This is kind of like a fake. I believe this is the environment itself is a 3D, but you get HDR image that you can use to light your 3D object. So that's basically the idea. If you want to get rid of the background, you just turn on the transparency. So now you have your objects being lit. But we're gonna talk about Procedural Sky. So this guy right here, if you turn it on, it's already on, and you can just simply use it. You just need to find the dynamic sky here. Here, there's dynamic sky panel. You just tap on create. So now there is a world named dynamic 1. That means here in the world, instead of using the default world, you can find dynamic 1. So I'll save this. And here, if we go to view all, or just tap home button, you can see the setup that's being created for you automatically. Control up, and you can see this is the actual procedural sky. It's basically made up of some clever noise texture, and there is a bunch of normal that you can use to control the direction of the sky. There's this mixed color for the horizon and the sky and the cloud. So if we take a look now, I want to see the sky as well, so turn off transparent. So this is our sky. This is the default. Maybe the clouds is a little bit too small. We can always control and adjust that. We can actually adjust it here, but this add-on comes with this slider, the parameter slider or the attribute slider over here. So we can control the brightness, and this should update in real time. It's actually a good idea to have some kind of ground. So I'll switch to solid and create a cube. Scale this. Just a basic floating floor, or the floor can be a little bit bigger, but I'll keep it like this for now. I will assign a material, just principal BSDF. Okay, so we have the ground. You can still see the horizon. It's a good idea sometimes to cover the horizon and render it from the camera. Actually, view, active camera. This is the more correct way to do it. So you have the camera, you have the horizon, and yeah, and you just simply hit render. Okay, so I like to work like this. So now yeah, we are almost pretty much done. Basically, you just need to control the sky. How do you like the sky color to be? Maybe afternoon sky. Horizon color will be a little bit bluish, oranges. This is more like a winter sky. Okay, actually, that's a little bit strange with the color. But anyhow, you can tweak it until you're happy. So yeah, for something to work really nicely, you need to think about the environment, the lighting, the actual material of the object. Of course, like in this case, the monkey head, we just use the super basic default of the principles. But you also have a lot to tweak here. Like if you turn on the subsurf, you start to get something that looks like human skin. This random walk is actually really fast and give you a nice result. Let's see if the with the principle we can, if we turn off the subsurf, we can turn on the metallic to 100%. So we have like a metallic objects. This should give you full reflections, especially if you turn off the roughness, make it really small. So that's fully reflective material, like metal. Sometimes you want to add some kind of noise, perhaps, for the roughness. Yeah, or even plug it to the metallic. The metallic looks unrealistic if it's looking like this, so perhaps you want to add like layer weight and using this facing angle. So I think whatever now near the edges is going to be more reflective. So this is more realistic, a little bit more realistic, and you can have a little bit of specularity. Yeah, there's nothing much I can add except, okay, maybe if you want to turn it into glass, just turn transmission to 100% and you have something that looking a little bit more like glass now. But this is like super basic. There's a lot. You can really tweak the material for your objects until it's looking like super realistic. With the recent Blender, you also have these options to turn on transparent glasses. That means if you render this out and turn on the transparent glass, you're gonna get a nice transparent alpha that you can use later on, maybe in Photoshop or something. Not forgetting one more thing, if you use cycles, you can use lamp like area light, but it's also, you can also use any kind of mesh and then just assign like emit material. So emission material, this will turn it into a light instead of using the light object itself. So either way, it's gonna work. Sometimes with area light, you need more sampling, but with this guy right here, it's gonna be easier to render for cycles. I'm gonna show it to you. So now, if you look at it, we have environment light. If I turn it on like 0.2, so it's environment is very dim. We have this plane that's kind of function like a light. And we also have an area light, and this is the real light objects in Blender that you can use to add to your scene. So there we go. There's a quick look on, I think I'm tackling most of the basic rendering, like a photorealistic render using cycles. There's a lot to it, but this is the most basic I could talk about. I'm just turning off the plane from the camera, so it's not visible on the camera. So there you go. Anyone with computer, you can just install Blender open source, and you can get this kind of result rather quite easily. And if you want one more thing, you can also turn on denoising. So if you properly render this out, render image, this will have a denoising value, so it's gonna get rid of small noise, and you get like a clean render. So this is Cycles render. In the future, you're gonna have Eevee render, which is more, like I said, more like a game engine real-time renderer for your 3D objects, and it's gonna be a lot faster. But yeah, it's kind of interesting at this point. You can basically do a realistic render much easier than before, than maybe 10 or 15 years ago, using like a commercial 3D package. But this day you can just use Blender. It's free, open source, that you can give donations for the developers, for Blender Foundations. But this is something that you can get pretty easily. So you can basically, all you need is a good 3D models. You need just a good material for it that works with Blender cycles, and you need a proper lighting for your objects. Or you can use HDR, you can use Procedural Sky, you can use a lot. So this is Cycles render for you. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.